Welcome back to the Budget Gamer channel, where we bring you critical and in-depth reviews of just about every indie game we can get our hands on, and today we're going to be taking a look at Alpha for the Nintendo Switch. And if you haven't heard of Alpha yet, the developer's claim to fame is that the game is supposed to be incredibly simple, but also incredibly difficult. But for anyone who's interested in the story, the game Alpha gets its name from the Alpha system, which was a defense system designed to save humanity, but after some odd years later, it turned on humanity and started to destroy the thing it had just helped save. And so now, after countless years of persecution and countless human beings dying in its wake, our hero has taken it upon himself to stop this system. But moving into the actual gameplay, it all carries out as a typical roguelike genre in pretty much every way we would expect. Moving from room to room, slaughtering every enemy you can find to unlock the next door to move to the next room. But one of the cool things about this game in particular is you start off the game pretty OP. So really the only true roguelike element is that if you don't manage to beat an entire level, you will start over from the beginning. But working with a laser sword as well as a drone that can free fire and lock onto different targets for you, you'll be able to attack and aggress multiple enemies both close and far at the same time. Additionally, while firing your drone does deplete some sort of energy, killing any enemy releases blue crystals which refill that energy bar on your drone. Other enemies that you kill may drop green health packs which will refill 50% of your total health, and some will even occasionally drop shields. As you slaughter your way through room to room though, you'll find out that certain destructible items exist that can also drop more blue gems or even health packs, and that certain larger, more mid-bossish level mobs will even drop full room clear bombs. But it should be noted that they'll only completely clear a room if it's full of low-level mobs, but they will wipe out a sizable portion of health for anything else that's larger. Dashing also is an ability that you'll have that'll burst you a short distance in whatever direction you're currently facing, which is incredibly helpful navigating out of harm's way of any enemies, which will flash in a red halo right before they're about to attack. Additionally, dashing will be worked into the environmental constraints, needing to dash over pits of spikes or around quick lasers. And though the timing of this short dash is a little bit tricky, you can use it over and over and over without draining any sort of stamina. And with how many times you'll need to play a level over again before you actually manage to beat it, you'll have lots of opportunities to get a really good handle on it. Making it to the end of the area, though, will actually save your progress and give you access to a new boss fight. And these boss fights, just like the larger mobs, will have a complement of attack patterns to learn. And if you already thought that the game was difficult, the bosses raise that up exponentially. Both your sword and your drone's fire actually do take off sizable chunks of the boss's HP, but it'll take a multitude of hits to actually bring it down, and at certain HP thresholds, all of its attack patterns completely change. So if you are one who enjoys engaging in really challenging boss fights, that might actually be a pretty good sell. And that does actually bring us on to the critique portion of the game. As mentioned earlier in the review, the game is supposed to be simple yet difficult. But it might actually be difficult for reasons other than what the developer intended. It will take a player a while to get a handle on the controls, but that's because the feeling of the controls just feels kind of off. And the best conclusion I can come up with is that the joystick controls are incredibly fluid in this pixelated environment, while the attack controls, especially for the sword, are limited to pretty much 4 directions. So while playing through the game and trying to engage in fast-twitch combat, you'll really feel like there's something that just doesn't sync up. And if I had to guess, it'd probably be that disjointed nature of the fluidity of the actual movement with the blocky nature of the attacks. Additionally, the difficulty of the game does ramp up when considering that this is a top-down view roguelike. And while that really shouldn't give any players anything that they're not prepared for, the design of the environments looks appropriate but doesn't actually function correctly. And so in that sense, there's a bit of a disjoint between the actual programming of a 2D and a 2.5D environment, and in that sense, a lot of the difficulty in the learning curve of the game is having the player learn how certain static artifacts behave. Another effect of the possible bug issues between the programming of a true 2D and 2.5D environment deals with the firing damage. In many areas, there will be walls that should in all rights block fire, and about 50% of the time they do. But if you merely turn your character a certain way, you can float your drone right through one of the walls and destroy every character in a room without actually having to be in danger of taking any fire. And while these type of environmental glitches and bugs aren't really something that the player is going to have a hard time forgiving and just getting past and continuing playing the game, one of the larger issues that's a lot less forgivable, as this game is intended to be difficult, deals with the simplistic nature of the enemy character's AI. Barring the boss fights, pretty much every single character is going to attack you when you're within range. But that means if you're not in range, they're probably not going to be attacking. And when combining this with the ability to pretty much stand in an unperceivable area of what should be a 2.5D wall, you can merely stand in the corner of a room and destroy everything without actually contributing any sort of effort to the game. And even without being told this, it's something the player is going to quickly learn and completely removes any level of challenge. That is, of course, though, barring boss fights, as boss fights are a completely different animal. And I would have to say that while the boss fights in the game are probably the game's best selling point, they're still not free of these same glitches. And my best example of this is if you just happen to find yourself in an unfortunate situation when a boss zips off screen, it can completely force you outside of the playable area, just leaving you there until the boss manages to kill you. And while dying over and over and over in a boss fight is the way that you're supposed to be able to slowly learn its attack patterns and move on, and part of the thing that makes defeating the boss so satisfying, dying to an environmental glitch just feels a little cheap. All in all though, while I could definitely talk about my experiences with Alpha for a long time, I'd have to say it's not a completely bad game. It had a really good premise in that arcade level of difficulty, and visually it's really appealing even if the soundtrack currently has some issues. But until these bugs and glitches get patched, there's really not even a question as to whether the game's worth the price or not. But that does about wrap up the review of Alpha on the Nintendo Switch, so if you enjoyed the review, or especially if you found it helpful, feel free to throw me a like or a comment to show your support or to tell me what you think about the game. And don't forget to click that little bell icon when you subscribe to stay updated with the latest content. There are new and unique indies coming out literally every single day, so there's always going to be some new game to find out about right here. But since I can only cover a couple games a week, if you want to know which ones might be coming out next, I always post about that in the announcement section in our Discord, and sometimes I mention a little hint in my tweets. And if you wanted to check up on any of those things, you can follow any one of the links in the bottom right corner of our channel's banner. But anyway, this has been Budget Gamer, so as always, thanks for watching.